farm over in Divide Creek, right?
Right,
In
right.
Silt.
But that's,
Clara Coleman.
But now she's gone back to
Yeah,
Maine.
she's gone back and she's working as a consultant with farmers and with Wegmans grocery chain to try and get their farmers, the farmers that supply them, to be more, you know, organic in their growing practice and more like Elliot, like her father.
I would say Maine would be tougher than here.
Yeah, and Elliot, all hats off to Elliot. He's doing an amazing job of growing year-round food in Maine on the coast.
Yeah.
And he has we were able, thanks to his daughter Clara, able to go visit him a couple of winters ago during the winter and spend a day with him. And what I loved about him, which was something as a new farmer that was so important, is that he studied the traditions in France and Europe and all over the place, as well as the U.S., and he said there is nothing new under the sun. So people who keep their ideas to themselves are just foolish. You know, we should be sharing all of the knowledge, which he does. He's very efficiency-oriented, and he comes up with ideas for more efficient tools, and he gets a retired engineer to design them, and then he doesn't patent them. He just gives them to Johnny Seeds to sell, and he's a real inspiration, I think.
Yeah, he is. He just wants the machine, someone to build them so he can use them.
And then everybody else
He doesn't care who else uses them.
He just wants his.
He says, this is what it'll take for me to actually be able to hire people and make a couple of pennies on this food and be more efficient at planting and growing. So he's a great resource, and a lot of people are benefiting from it. We also have here tonight, we have Kim Brooks over here, and we have Chloe, both doing amazing work gardening all over this site and in these hoop houses. And we started in like 2009 building the main greenhouse up here, followed in 2010, right, with the caretaker house and kitchen. And then later, a year later, 2011 or 2012, they built the first high tunnel, which was made by Rimmel, which also is a company that Elliot Coleman has advised in terms of how to build greenhouses. Yeah.
She's also doing things for them.
Yeah, and Clara is always recommending the Rimmel high tunnels. They're made in Vermont, and they're very intelligently made, very economical houses. And so these are all for annual production, and so they go down into cold zone in the wintertime, and there's cold hardy greens getting covered in there all winter long. And you went through the whole winter, right?
We did. We had one new house that we built and planted last fall, and we felt shockingly successful, and for our first year, and gave us enough confidence to build two more, so that we can. Growing does slow down when the days get shorter, so we were finding there were, I think, 3 weeks total and not consecutive during the whole winter that we were unable to harvest because growth hadn't been fast enough. And then when you live in a place like Steamboat, where Christmas is a really big season, and we had very little, we thought maybe this way, if we can now rotate and just perhaps harvest every 2 weeks or whatever, but have more beds to harvest, we'll be able to supply more in the winter.
So you'd put a hoop inside one of these as sort of a double layer, and that helps do it. Okay.
So there are a couple of ways to do it. One is we uncover it during the day and let the sun come and heat the soil, and then cover it at night. I think Elliot does a lighter cover and keeps it covered during the day. He has less sun, and we may experiment and see in terms of what's most efficient, what's most effective.
But doesn't get much.
Right. Nope.
But they don't get 40 below.
No.
I got some climate batteries in this one?
No, this is all passive solar.
So there's no boost in case of freeze?
Fans, just moving some air around.
And you didn't lose anything to frost?
Really not, no. It's all in crop selection and timing. So we chose the cold hardy crops, so basically most brassicas, kale, arugula, tatsoi, so that's our salad mix. And then spinach is really cold hardy, and then carrots do really well too. So the key is getting the things planted and up to a good size to where they're growing before. Here it's really more about losing the light. So, we would come in some mornings and there would be frost, you'd see frost on the plants, but if you just let them alone, they'll perk back up on their own.
Cool.
So So we'll probably pull out these summer crops in the next month and start planting for winter. So probably before, I mean, and that hurts when you're pulling out producing tomato plants, but we got to do it in order to get the plants up to a good size so that they can take the winter lack of sun and cold.
There are some high tunnels like these over in Hotchkiss and Paonia and in Montrose that we've seen other farmers doing, actually getting tomatoes to go year-round in. Again, it's a real timing issue, but some of them, they're growing their tomatoes so long that they end up growing them straight up out of the ground and only allowing one vine, and when it reaches the top, they pull off the leaves from the ground up to about this high, and then they take the plant down and walk it down the row until it's like this tall, and then hang it back up again, and then move, all the plants move around. And you look at some of their beds, and you'll see like, 20 vines going parallel to the path all the way along, and every once in a while, every 2 feet one comes up. And so they can keep the vine going by lowering it and go around the whole year. But that takes, if you have a 20 below night, you lose the whole thing.
Well, Paonia, Hotchkiss, and Montrose, they're a lot warmer.
Yeah, they're a lot warmer than we are in the Roaring Fork Valley and you are up here. So every site has its own kind of challenges, so you have to kind of finesse it along that way. And in these high tunnels here, there are excavated trenches with all this healthy composted soil in there, and the roots stay right in there, and you put your water right in there, and everything the plants need then is right there. There's another way we're looking at doing very tiny little climate batteries to get you one little layer or one little zone higher in something like that, where you're covering with hoop covers or row covers at night. You can have just a single tiny little fan in a single climate battery tube just to circulate the air with the ground and the air underneath that little row cover.
And you're going to explain the whole climate battery thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually we'll explain more about it when we get up there in detail, but essentially the climate battery technology is really the simplest thing. It's just providing an airspace under the ground with a tube or a pipe or a hose that's about that big in diameter or that big, perforated. And if you take the air off the top of the greenhouse that's warm and moist, and you pump it down into the ground, it loses good 15 to 20% of its moisture content. It comes out at least 15 degrees cooler in the middle of the summer. So you're cooling the greenhouse, you're storing the heat for the winter, and then in the winter when it's really cold outside, you can do that same air movement and pull BTUs out. So it kind of takes what would otherwise be in a passive solar greenhouse, daytime highs and nighttime lows, and daytime highs and nighttime lows, and makes them more like this.
Basically a thermal mass system.
It's a thermal mass setup, and but it's actively fired. Okay. So, and we experiment with different patterns of putting the hose in, different patterns of perforations, etc., to try to see what gives us the biggest drop in temperature and humidity across the battery. And that's pretty much it. And then there's a control system that tells it when to turn on and when to turn off. And we're simplifying those as well and putting them in greenhouses like these. So you can look in here and see, maybe Kim could demonstrate how there's certain communities of plants and different quadrants in these 3 high tunnels that are all aimed at annual production and timing of harvest. There's also the seed propagation house, collecting seed, drying plants for seed, etc. And we just started something this year during this past winter in Basalt that you'll probably do here. Our little public library has a seed library now, and the idea is you borrow the seed, you check it out, there's a little UPC code right on it, and it puts it on your name, but they don't come back and say, where's our seed at the end of the fall, because your crop could fail, so it's all voluntary. But the idea is you plant it, harvest the seed from it, bring it back, and after a few years of this, whatever that plant is going to be healthier, more robust, more acclimated to your climate, your soil, your drought, etc. And everybody in town all the gardeners are now like, oh, you know, they're on YouTube finding out, how do you save this seed? You know, how do you save this seed?
Right.
And picking the seed from the very best plants
Exactly.
of all the ones they plant.
What's successful and giving it back.
And I'm pretty sure that you can, you know, make better plants much faster than Monsanto can. With breeding rather than genetic manipulation.
Yeah.
And so we like to practice that because actually it's something we could do in our own backyards by ourselves with no help from big corporations and laboratories, you know, with scientists in them. So I always love things that I can, you know, do myself. Yeah, I had our home brewing meeting last night. You can see there's a few people here from that. We had some fun. So do you want to talk about what's in the various hoop houses?
Yeah.
Might be best if everybody can kind of go 2 people deep and look in the side. And maybe Kim can go inside and sort of point out what's
This is our
in each
seed
hoop house.
house here where we start seeds. Started on March 1st.
Right here?
Yep, this little one, little lean-to. And so I start all the, you know, transplanting crops in there, and then we direct sow a lot also. For those, we have the misters, so overhead water for the direct sown crops, and then for the transplants, the big squash and eggplant, we've got a drip system. We're trying to divide each house into quadrants and do plant families, and that'll help with our rotation throughout the 3 houses. So this one isn't a great example, but like that back quadrant, that's all salad greens, so that's mostly brassicas. And then it'll just rotate around. We actually just started trying cover cropping in the hoop houses, so that's next door. We did buckwheat and peas, and we just mowed it down. We're letting it sit, turn the water back on, turn it under, and then we'll plant our winter crops. Compare if we... So, yeah, unheated, again, just want to really bring that home. It's an unheated hoop house, and we grew all through the winter. So in the coldest month of winter, we had 3 interior layers in here. So this is double poly insulated. It's got a little fan, so that provides some good insulation. But then on the coldest nights, we would have crop cloths laying right on the crop. And then we'd have a little mini hoop with crop cloth over that, and then the really cold nights we would put plastic over that. So interior temperature, the low we saw on those 40 degrees below 0 nights was 16, and underneath all those blankets it was about 26. So we saw some frost, but everything's taken. So even like carrots get better with a little frost. Their starches turn to sugar, so you know winter carrots are really tasty. So yeah, pretty exciting. So this is all automated. These sides roll up, and then there's a ridge vent also, and then both rolling doors will open those during the day and really get the air flowing through because it gets pretty hot in here.
The sides come up and down automatically?
Yep. Oh. But actually, this past couple weeks, we've just been manually turning them on and opening them so they don't go up and down.
How long does this last?
For here, we're thinking 3 to 4 years. I mean, they say 5 to 7 years, but I don't think we're planning on that. Right.
It takes a kind of a small volunteer army. You got it, and then you get
Barn building.
Barn building. Exactly.
Does anyone have any questions?
The question of doing it at different times of the time, but I'm curious how much you did to amend the soil.
A lot, and I continue to do a lot. Every time I take out a crop.
From the get-go, from the start.
A lot of compost. We make a lot of compost, but we actually brought in compost to amend this soil. This was kind of a swampy hay meadow before, and so the soil was really poor. And so you can actually see the difference if we go from here over to the first one, which has now been planted for just over a year. And even in that short amount of time, you can really see the difference. And every time we take out a crop, we add compost, and then I use alfalfa meal for nitrogen, fish meal, crab shell meal, rock phosphate, salt, sulfur-mag, green sand, only one or two others. So, you know, lots of stinky stuff in there. Yeah.
Plants love it.
Yeah.
And I was just outside. I had a little portable or pocket weather tracker here, which I use when we're looking at greenhouses and checking how they're doing. And when I was standing outside with this in the shade, it was 91 and a half, 92 degrees, and about 25% humidity just outside this building. And I walk in here and it's 88, and it's at 40% humidity in here. So the difference in just what the air is doing, how much water it's holding, and how much heat it's got in it, tells you a lot about how well the greenhouse is performing. And if these plants just love high humidity conditions. So if you planted these same plants outdoors after frost, they would not be doing as well as they're doing in here, because here they're in their desired elements, high humidity and fairly high humidity and good sun.
Let's go to the first one.
Yeah. It's now going up as I step outside. It was 88 and 35. So now it's dropping. You see how fast it's dropping in humidity. Just
heat mats, and there's actually radiant heat in that concrete floor. But we start everything on the little heat mat. Plus that galvanized wall really heats
and it
everything.
reflects the light and everything.
Yeah.
Elliot's my guru.
I can tell. Is new also, and so we planted these two new ones in June. And this is the one strand tomato technique that Michael was talking about. We'll see if we need to lower them before we take them out.
So the crop rotation, you said, is the crop rotation within each building, or it goes from building and around?
The idea is the rotation will be between the three buildings.
Between the three.
So each house will be divided into quadrants. This is a little bit better example. We've got peppers, tomatoes, and cukes and squash here. A few basils that are dragging along. There's our experimental crop cover crop quadrant back there, and I forget what we have back there. But so then we'll rotate through the whole 12 quadrants.
It looks just like Ellie's pictures. You guys are doing good.
It looks exactly like it.
Awesome. Thank you. That's the best compliment I've ever had.
Yes, they weren't enhanced photos.
I love this kale down the middle.
Yeah, and it's working pretty well. I mean, ideally the plants would have been up here a little bit more and getting some room under there, but it works.
Yeah.
So this house is now in its second summer season, and we planted a little more intensely in here this year because based on our soil reports, the soil actually is getting better. So, you guys can see right here. So here we have eggplants down this row and then 2 rows of spinach on either side. Here we have
staggered tomato plants with the one string method and tail down the center. Chard down the center. Yep, this is
That's some spinach.
dino tail.
That's spinach there?
That is a spinach weed.
Spinach weed.
So just a little more intense cropping in here because I feel like the soil could take it a little bit more. So.
He's trying to find companion plants to work with.
More or less, yeah, definitely. And we always try and have flowers, you know, like this arugula weed. We let go here, and there's the bees pollinating it, and they're working away. So we love flowers, always try and have flowers all over the place. Cosmos sort of volunteered in here too. So, and then it's really good.
You have hives as well?
Hives?
For bees?
Unfortunately not yet. We talked about it, but in my like brief research, I found that around here it's like 50 cents a year.
Yeah, most of them do.
Do they stay in the winter?
Here's right behind me here is cucumbers and dill. It's ready-made for pickle. This is the pickle rub.
So I just got a question about controlling bugs, and the answer to that is I don't control them. I just try and not get involved in it. Growing organically, you're going to have some bugs. So our main methods of dealing with bugs are, I squish them, and the spray we use are neem oil, and then a product called Pure Spray Green, which is owner certified, and we use that as the last resort, and then we encourage a lot of beneficial insects, and then we also import beneficial insects when we need to. So lots of green leafing, lots of ladybugs, and we're starting to actually see populations of these things, which is really important for what we want. But like I said, last year we had a flea beetle problem, and so I had to import some flea beetle predators. So, you know, I just look online and I used to go through really awesome lady out of Durango, and M&R Durango was her name, and she would call her up and say, you know, this is what I'm seeing on my plant, and she'd say, oh, I think it's good, you need this, and deal. So it's always good, yeah. The nematodes and beneficial nematodes, ladybugs, ladybugs.
I also have high hopes that our consuming culture will eventually learn that, you know, little holes and tail leaves are nature's food inspectors, making sure that it hasn't been sprayed with poison.
Yeah.
So every time you see a little hole in your kale or your lettuce, think, there's a vote that this is organic. I didn't need a government inspector to tell me. This animal ate that and left.
Bugs are poison. Make your sense.
Yeah. Little holes in your plant from food tasters or poison.
So I actually up in the greenhouse this spring, and we'll make our way up there, but on one of our citrus trees up there, I was kind of looking up and I saw some good spots and, you know, that feeling. And so I got up there and I looked, and it was just covered with aphid mummy. And so that was like, so some, I think it was, I think it was a predator wasp.
Trichogramma wasp.
Sucking those little aphids dry and leaving their body in shadow.
The trichogramma is a beautiful little wasp. It's about the size of a speck of dust when I'm up in my apple tree going. It's this, and it's like a little alien show. It kills the aphid and it injects its own eggs into the aphid. So the aphid then, its body will feed new trichogramma wasps. So they perpetuate themselves. and they're very helpful, amazingly helpful. And then there's other things you can do, like this year I have these beautiful yuccas in my front yard, and they make this really tall stalk of flowers, and they're all edible. The flower, the entire flower is edible. Throw it in a salad, it's delicious. But if I don't watch carefully, the ants farm their aphids on the flowers. So they climb up the stalk, they bring their little aphids up there, and they get aphids growing on every stem. So I watched them carefully. I watched them start to create this pattern again this year. I said, all right, this year, flowers are mine. So last year you got them, this year I'm getting them. So I waited until they had filled out 3 stems, and then I went to do my sheet mulch composting with my kitchen garbage, and I just took those 3 stems off, put them in the compost, dumped the kitchen waste on top of them, covered them with leaves and green manure, weeds and plants, covered it all over, buried them, and then the next day I went back and there were all these little engineer ants where I'd made the cuts, looking at it and talking to each other like, hell, where did they go, you know? And I'm like, you know, maybe they can come back and maybe they can, but it took them almost a week to start a new culture. And what they do with the aphids is they farm them like we farm cattle or sheep. And the aphids eat the plant and they secrete a very sweet liquid, waste, which the ants cover. So they're using these little aphids to collect this sweet fluid that they feed their babies and whatever. So I'm just like, you have the cherry tree. These flowers are mine. So you can play with nature that way. Just study what's happening and just try something. Yeah, you can get a permit to do it if you're on the well. That's what the law says now. You're on the well. But on the household level where you're on the city well, technically you're not allowed to do it. But if your household is on the county, then you've got a well. Yeah, but then you're on a well, so you can apply for a permit to get keep your rainwater. But on the other hand, there's no real enforcement regime. So I don't know what to do. I catch my rainwater and I run it into my garden and it goes into the soil.
Definitely bought some other than giant it's from Bob or something, or Elkstone cover cropping. So like in the front garden where we'll go next, you'll see it's covered with clover. You know, so that's helping the orchard trees, the berry trees in there, and then we'll weed whack it down. And because clover is a legume, it releases nitrogen into the soil when you fill the top, and then some of the roots nitrogen into the soil. We let that green matter just sit, you know, and do a lot of We don't. We just have, right now we just have a big trash can that we put like 5 gallons of compost in, and then we just dip out of the creek and fill it up. And then we let it sit for like 5 days, and then we'll come back with the 5-gallon bucket and dip it in and just dump it on plants. Yeah.
You can also do compost teas and filter them and put them in a backpack. Just spray them on the ground around the plants. So you may look like you're out there spraying Roundup, but you're actually spraying compost tea, and you know you're doing some real good for the roots in the soil. So a number of ways.
Because I would like to do that. I have
So you'd have to, whatever you produce would be really good stuff.
You gotta make sure you compost your manure. Yeah.
But I have last one and then the same and then the same. Then the same is 2 years old.
Yeah. I put a No, maybe just mention our little orchard up behind the greenhouse. So this orchard is here. All the trees were brought in pretty big. And then the orchard behind the greenhouse, we got all of those apple trees and berry whips, and they were like this big. And I mean, these are doing great, and these are doing so. Where did you get them? Like actual small plants, you know, so they can sort of acclimate as small plants and then well, you got patience. Yes, dwarf or semi-dwarf up there. Yeah.
Where did you get it from?
Backyard where we get more sun. It's now a 2-story tree with a trunk that's got about 15
It's got a lime tree in the living room.
And
Nothing.
so many apples.
What elevation?
down to 79 degrees and 58% humidity.
20 years ago,
Okay, so this is the first greenhouse. This is the tropical greenhouse. It supports tropical, Mediterranean, and up plants. And so here you have Meyer lemons and lots of different citrus trees all around us in here. Fig trees in this bed. See figs all on the branches here. Looks like your first crop of figs are done. Harvested all done. There's when you prune these, you can leave some of last year's wood to grow figs on, and then the new wood will produce the second crop. And this is the second crop.
That's the first crop.
This is the first crop? Oh, here you go. So there will be. Where are the new ones?
I think we're a little bit behind you guys. Our second crop doesn't come into like
So, but these trees have gone huge in 4 years. The other one has been here for 4 years, and this one is this one also just 2 years. So, you create an environment that they like, and off they go. And so Kim can explain a lot more about all the different plant communities in here, but there's a lot of edible stuff. These are some really nice big nasturtiums. They're edible. Spilanthes, which is a medicinal herb, can be used in a tincture, a lot of different things like that. And so all of the communities of plants in here are all just thriving on this planting bed soil, where there's a climate battery underneath us that you can see in this corner over here and that corner over there are the exhaust, the big 30-inch diameter. So when that fan is on, you feel this really cool air coming pumping out of there. And all these smaller tubes up here, there are 3 of them going into each of these big barrels, driving that air into the ground, going across in these smaller tubes and coming out over here. So that'll do the bulk of the heating load in the wintertime. And then it's backed up when you get the really cold periods with this pellet stove here. And we're doing that kind of in that manner in a lot of greenhouses that are meant for growing anything you want pretty much through the winter. So in here they can grow tomatoes and all kinds of annual vegetables, any kind of annual vegetables in the winter. And these specialty crops being able to have your own citrus, Steamboat Springs, is also pretty nice. So all of these planting beds that are raised up off the ground have really, really rich soil in them. And they keep on adding stuff to build the soil further. And when the plants sprout in there, they go crazy. They really grow well. This was my first big greenhouse design. I'll point out one of my errors, which is the front wall, the south wall there, is too high. In the winter, the sun, that wall casts a shadow over that bed. So, you know, these days I'm always weighing between how much snow is going to fall off the roof and collect out here. And here it'll actually bridge to the roof, to the gutter on some winters. So there's that to consider, but then there's also, you have to consider the inside. You want the sun in the winter to actually hit the soil, or at least get within a few inches of it, so when the plant comes up, it doesn't have to reach literally for the sky and spend all of its energy getting 3 feet up into the sun. It is better off if the sun is already there and it only has to go a few inches. Because the sun is the plant's motor. It's what drives it, so you need to make sure you're getting everything the plant needs. What else should we cover?
Sheldon, how many pellets did you end up going through?
Oh,
Did you
yeah.
have to use that?
About half a pallet.
Half a pellet? Wow.
In December and January, it's like a bag a night,
Yeah.
and then once we get through that, it's not so much.
Well, January, we always got about 0.
Pretty cold.
Yeah, in our area, we had 3 solid weeks. It didn't get to 20 or 30 below, but we had 3 solid weeks where it didn't go above 0. And so it was between, 0 or 5 above maybe on some days and down to 10 or 15 below. At night for 3 solid weeks, it was very tiring.
Could you monitor some of the main nutrients and pH of the soil?
What's that?
How carefully do you monitor the soil quality, in other words, nitrogen, phosphate, pH, things like that?
We test twice a year.
Twice a year.
Can you tell us a little bit about the water tanks?
Sure. Well, these are here for heat storage, and they're perfectly functional for fish raising, if you want to get into that. Fish raising is a whole other science. You're growing all these plants in a greenhouse, and you start fishing. You think, I thought I knew how to ride a bicycle. This is a totally different bicycle. And it's totally different nutrient stream, and they have different needs and temperatures, etc. So there is a gal who was working at Osage Gardens for many years that was hired by one of our clients in Roanoke Fork Valley to run their greenhouse, and she had never done fish before. So it took her about a year, and she's going great guns now. She's raising tilapia year-round in 3 tanks. And she likes having more tanks. Says she wishes that she had a 4th tank, because she can, it takes about 6 months to get them up to the harvesting rate. So she can harvest every other month. But the more tanks she has, the more she can do that.
What are you feeding?
She is feeding them an organic pellet that is produced, but she also feeds them vegetable matter that she cuts off of the plants, fruit plants in the greenhouse, and they eat that. There's a bunch of stuff that they'll eat. It's all.
Trying to make a complete circle out of getting pellets.
Right. It is tough. If you're raising trout and you're really good at worm farming, you can feed them worms, but you really got to get after it, because they'll eat a lot of worms. But we had there's a farmer in Peonia that we were going to visit once, and we stopped by there and bought some of their chickens and frozen chickens and stuff, and they were saying, yeah, we've got all of our inputs for the sheep, the goats, the chickens, the turkeys, for the cattle. We got all the inputs right here on the farm except for the protein for the poultry. So Jerome said, I can help you with that. I'll bring you, next time I come over, I'll bring you a worm farm. So he grew them a worm farm in a big tree bucket, in a tree root bucket, and he was the only thing that would fit in the back of my car on the way over there the next time. He traded her that for a bunch of bags of her grain that they raised on the farm for his chickens.
So laying hen food, you give them worms.
So what she and her husband did with this worm farm is they made a compost fence area adjacent to the chicken fence, and they just started layering these worms and garbage and just stuff that they were harvesting off the ranch. Layer. and then once a week or twice a week, they go out and water the crap out of it, and all the big ones would come up for air, and then they open the gate, and the chickens go in and eat their protein, and then they go back in. And they're like, okay, that was done, and now we're good.
No laying hens. No laying hens.
Well, these hens are crazy.
Right, but I mean, you wouldn't need to buy the commercial.
No, now she doesn't need to buy anything.
Okay.
So she's a really happy farmer. But it was funny to watch her set this whole thing up, and then watch when, she goes over to open the gate. Chickens and turkeys are like struggling with each other to be the first one in, to get the one that's like this big.
And they swallow them, they don't eat them.
Right. Yeah, like noodles. Yeah.
Exactly.
May I suggest maybe we migrate outside? We have a few things if some of you are feeling